Are Christian women responsible for the growth of wokeness in our culture, Marxism in our culture? Are we to blame? Today's episode breaks down just, I think, self reflection on our role as Christian women in the fight and the spiritual battle for our country, for our culture, for our families. If you're new to our channel, my name is Donovan. I'm the founder of the Women's School, where we offer mindset and skill-based training so women can flourish and truly fulfill their God-given purpose. And so today, I want to invite you to think deeply about your role and responsibility as a woman, because your purpose, your fulfillment, and the way God designed you, it can never be separate from who you are as a woman, your feminine nature. And I think we need to start asking ourselves, have we been asleep in the wheel as a woman? And what is our role moving forward? And how can we then become a true catalyst and a warrior for truth, beauty, and goodness in a world that has become so godless and genderless, and that this should wake all of us up. So I'm going to break down, actually, Tommy Robinson, I believe that is his name, has been such an advocate for the fight for free speech in England. And he, for those of you that don't know, he was imprisoned. I actually didn't know much about him until recently. I kind of did my own homework. And he was imprisoned for free speech as a journalist. But as of recent, what we are seeing in our algorithms, or if you're not seeing it, you're not paying attention, is how Europe has fallen, how England has been taken over by wokeism, illegal immigration, and Marxism. And it's all happening so fast, so quickly, that the narrative out there is England has fallen. Why is this important for us? Because we have to be in the forefront of the spiritual warfare. This is not politics, ladies. This is spiritual warfare. And I want us to truly ask ourselves, are we distracted? Are we indifferent? Are we way too comfortable in our lives that we are not in the forefront of the battle? Are we silent in the face of evil? What are we doing to equip ourselves mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually with a mindset and skill set necessary to fight the spiritual battle, both in our own homes, outside our homes, and in our communities, in our culture, in our country? Because if not now, then when? It could be too late. And if not you, then who? You have an irreplaceable purpose, role in this spiritual battle that we are living in. And so let's break this down with eyes of humility, self-reflection, and courage to do what is noble and righteous moving forward, because it's not just about us, it's also about our future generation, our children, and they get to see how we fight the spiritual battle, the political battle, the battle against evil, and it's not what's taught, it's what's caught. But they also pay attention to how we are paying attention to the state of our culture and what our role is in taking seriously our purpose that is unique to our femininity. So let's break this down. Wokeness versus godliness. As we have seen the rise of wokeness, which comes from being awake to tolerance and allowing whatever you feel like to be the God of your life. That's what seems to be wokeness. It's the gender confusion. It's the pro-choice. It's taken over our universities and our institutions, also our lower education. And we are seeing that because of the books that are being promoted that are intolerable immorally for our children's minds. I mean, it's now, we are now seeing the repercussions of these books that are essentially pornographic for our children to see. They've perhaps been there for a long time, slowly, subtly, but we've been busy raising our children, rightfully so. That's what we are called to do, to focus on raising our family. But because of that, we have also not paid attention to what's happening in our culture, and maybe we are partly responsible for the growth of wokeness. But you can make that decision, because we all have individual stories, and we also have individual, I would say, wounds and crosses in our lives that maybe have made it challenging. But moving forward, we have to ask the hard question: what's my role in bringing and the revival of faith and gender in our culture? Oops, sorry about that. There's no
society.
And what replaces it? What replaces God? LGBTQ+, Marxism, communism, Islam. There's a
Charlie Kirk had this great quote that the fall of the West will come from wokeism, Marxism, and Islam. And I've really been reflecting on that because it's coming from all sides. And why is it important for us to protect American freedom? Because in some ways, it replicates our God-given freedom, the freedom to choose, but it's not the freedom. But what we've taken is we have taken that freedom to choose the way God intended it to sort of this heights of immorality where we can do whatever we want. Freedom has to be rooted in responsibility because ultimately we have to choose what actually makes us happy, our individual, and flourish as a country. But the problem is that we've taken God out of freedom. And that's what we're seeing is this growth of wokeness is because we live in a godless and genderless culture and they're taking over everywhere.
Void that's been left. If you remove God, you leave a void.
If you remove God, then you become God. If not only do you have a void, meaning that the buck stops at you, there's no greater meaning in life because everything revolves around you. You are the center of the universe and not God. If you just think outside of your faith, logically speaking, imagine a world where you're the center of everyone's world and how tragic and how difficult that is. Because first of all, if you show up that way, no one will be around you. And if you live that way, you are not going to be fulfilled because you won't have the capacity to serve other people, which will then make you feel empty because ultimately everything is about you. And if it doesn't work out, you will fall apart. Being selfish is a very hard life. Stress actually makes us selfish, and selfishness makes us repelling and it makes us unfulfilled women. But we might not understand sort of the kind of like if you follow the trail of maybe I don't have God in my life, or maybe I'm not taking God seriously in my life, or maybe something is replacing God. Now, that could not be you. A lot of our audience are women of faith, and that's not something that maybe they battle. But what perhaps they're battling is the fact that maybe we have tolerated the godlessness in our culture. I know for myself, I have worked with mindset and skill-based training for women. I want women to flourish. I want women to have the solution to creating and designing a life that allows them to have more life in their life. And I've not necessarily wanted to be in the forefront of this battle. I didn't necessarily want to fight the good fight of talking about culture war. And I'm very strategic about what things I actually talk about. But what I have come to realize is that if I'm not talking about things to hold the line of evil as part of my own micro call, then it doesn't matter if I teach women mindset and skill-based training, evil is going to be compounding and surrounding us. We don't have a choice. We have to be vocal about the evil that's surrounding us, the breakdown of morality in our education system, and gone are the days that we are silent, indifferent, and comfortable. Gone are the days where we say, you know what, that's their battle. This is us. I'm just going to raise my family and make sure that all is well with my family. There's no place to go and escape. If we have digital ID, if we have social media, if we don't have free speech, it's going to impact you. And it's already impacting us. We have bathrooms that are unisex, and we have forgotten the reverence for our femininity and the respect for masculinity. All that is gone when we live in a genderless culture. So it is seeping into our everyday life. We can no longer escape and pretend that we can hide somewhere and be off the grid. We have become so reliant to just the reality of the grid, our food system, our health system, everything. So we have to be in the front lines. Otherwise, we are going to be a victim of this crazy world that has become so godless. And if not you, then who's going to fight the battle? If not the good, faithful women that have truth on their side, that though living imperfectly and trying to do their best, myself primarily doing it so imperfectly, we still acknowledge God in our life and that we still know that at the end of the day, the buck doesn't stop at us. These are the women that need to be in the front lines of politics, of Hollywood, of business. We need to be in the front line of the culture war because at the end of the day, though we are imperfect, just as David was, we still know that God is God and that we are not God. And that's the difference and the distinction, because wokeness takes away God and gender. We have been not only neutered, but we have become the moral authority in our life, which produces craziness and anarchy. There's genius in leadership. There's genius in a moral authority called God, from not just from a faith level, but from a very practical level. If there's no one that's in charge, then that produces craziness, which is now what's in charge is everyone's feelings. There's no harmony when feelings, this feeling and my truth and your truth and what I believe and I can change it. That produces such a level of craziness, but not only craziness, unhappiness in so many of women's lives. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it, physically, spiritually, mentally. Our youth have become so fragile because of this woke culture where we have what they call, couch. Oh my gosh, there's a word for it. It's essentially raising soft children where we have, it's basically, it's gonna bother me, but it's comfort couch where those that are triggered have a special couch to work through their emotions of being triggered. That is how we raise soft, weak children that are incapable of managing, the inconsistencies that life brings us and are triggered with every little thing. And that is the fastest way we're going to crumble in the world, when we have women that are incapable of interior strength, because that interior strength is what we need to battle the spiritual warfare around us, the political war. We have to be consistently resilient. And today women are so conditioned to be fickle. Everything is triggered. We are always offended. And that has compounded our capacity to be, to run away from the fight, because we're not soldiers. We're not strong, interiorly strong. We're not physically strong. We're not emotionally strong. This is our battle right now. Our battle is to strengthen our interior life so we can actually bring God back, especially because I think we have a window of opportunity right now where we can resist and we can rebel against what's happening in America and all over the world that's trying to suffocate our God-given freedom.
Fills that void? Which ideology? Now our government get on their knee to every ideology that wishes to destroy everything.
UK has essentially said, unless you have a digital ID, which will be connected to your, carbon blueprint, which is what this whole climate change is about, which feels like, oh, come on, are we really dealing with this? Yes, we are really dealing with this, and I wish we were not dealing with it. But it also Australia and Canada, they're all connected to this digital ID, which will then have a credit score. This sounded like conspiracy theory. Honestly, just like 5 years ago, I remember learning about the New World Order the One World Order, and learning about the families that ruled and the people that were sort of, we were the puppets. And I thought, well, okay, maybe some parts of it true. I feel like the truth is even worse than what we are learning, and it's even sinister than what we're learning. And I remember reading Taylor Marshall's Infiltration, which was very hard to read, about the infiltration in our church of Satanism and how that's permeating in every part of our culture. I remember Zach, is a King, I think is his name, and he talked about how the Satanists have infiltrated business and they're actually in charge of business, or the bankers or Hollywood, and they are intentionally there to confuse, to promote agenda, and we are seeing it everywhere. Even today in my reflection, I was talking about the reflection I'm listening in Hollow, which is Screw Tape Letters, and I'm letting our teenage children listen to it. And I listened to it this morning. It talked about the devil's minions, and I was just thinking about the cartoon Minions. Wow, how I let my children watch it. It seems so, it doesn't even actually really seem so innocent, because there's parts of that movie where I feel like, why is it the villain, the actual, character that we admire? This guy that's supposed to be evil, and then his minions. And I just think about the language and how we have become so diluted that we tolerate some of these languages that are really in some ways quite demonic. And I think that we have to be hyper vigilant more than ever, because we could be at our battle, and that is going to determine the freedom of our children. This is not the time to be complacent. This is not the time to be afraid to speak up. This is not the time to pretend as though we can just suppress it. This is the time to be loud, to be intentional, to be forthright, to really see the state of our culture and to study it. We can't be distracted because laundry's piling up. We can't be distracted because somebody thinks we're this. We have to be training harder than we were before, because we are living in a time that we might not have enough time to preserve our freedom.
That's great and successful about this nation. A massive wake-up call for me was the Paris Olympics opening ceremony. To see Christianity under such attack, to then know if they're attacking it this much.
I mean, just that image of of the Paris Olympics, which is a mockery of Christianity, the Last Supper. And yes, it sometimes feels like, now what do we do about it? What can one woman do with 8 children? And I'm sure most of you are saying the same thing. Well, we come together, we expose it. That's one thing that we can do. We talk about it amongst our friends. We bring it to surface so it doesn't grow in the dark, like what probably has become of a lot of the wokeness in our education system. It grew in the dark for a long time until it was exposed. Thank God for Jordan Peterson and courageous men who had the courage to expose it, and then also a lot more that have exposed it since then. But this is a direct mockery of Christianity, and yet, if you go to UK, you cannot actually, promote prayer or sing hymns of prayer outside your church. You will get a citation. I just did a quick reel on that. It's insanity. And if we think that England's, not coming here, we're crazy. If we think that Australia and Canada, we're basically getting surrounded. And as always, America stands as a beacon of light, the God-given freedom, which I believe is the freedom that God intends for humanity, though imperfect. We have a great country, and we have been attacked from within. The corruption and immorality from within our institutions and our government and our businesses and Hollywood has become our demise, and we cannot assume that this immoral culture will sustain us for our future, our children. This is a full-out war against our sexuality, our gender, and our God. And this is a time in history, which I always go back to Esther, where you were made for such a time as this. I think that a call to rise up and to train up mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually as a warrior is now. As mothers, as women, as wives is now. Coming together, a masculine and feminine revival where we are in dialogue, because this is just an outright mockery, and it's tolerated. That's the crazy part.
All the time. There must be a reason why. And if there's such evil and depravity and Satanism, there has to be the counterbalance.
And that's what I think is so hopeful, is because the evil that is literally slammed in our face is actually waking people up to truth. We are seeing a lot of conversions and people coming back to church. People that would never talk about politics are now talking about it, not as policy, but as a spiritual warfare. I think there's a revival of faith and freedom and femininity happening. That's what we talk about in the women's school. There is going to be a call for greater preservation of our faith like never before. And Charlie Kirk, I think, has been instrumental. I am still sad about every single time I think about his life, because he laid down his life to wake us up. And I'm indebted, and we are indebted to what he has done to the youth, that I think will be the leaders of the future generation, to restore our values, our faith, our freedom. And what I truly believe is that the fight for women is no longer just having freedom, but it's the interior freedom, the freedom to choose our highest and best self. And that requires formation. We have to form ourselves daily. We have to get on our knees and pray, but we have to study. We have to be very intentional about growing our skill set and our mindset. Skills being just, bite-sized virtues, compounding over time that builds that virtue. But we need to be skilled. We need to be competent and confident, because this is where we're living. And the hopeful thing is, I think we are going to be seeing a desire for embracing, celebrating, and growing in our femininity. I think because feminism has hijacked so much of every part of our education system, our healthcare, reproductive rights, Hollywood, I would say modern day feminism has hijacked it and completely made it godless and genderless. I think what we're going to see way forward is a return to some form of balance where, I don't want to go back to the way it was 150 years ago, where women had no choice, no voice, no freedom. Not the freedom to kill their child, but the freedom to be able to be part of the marketplace. But I also think that the current way of our culture, which is whatever you want, whenever you feel like, is not a sustainable model for so many women. And so what we're going to see is where's the virtue here? Where's the median? And I want to invite you to be part of that by forming yourself and training yourself, because we have to we have to be studying the state of our culture if we're going to be part of the culture war of good and evil. This is spiritual warfare. And this is why I think the lie of politics and telling Christian women not to be part of politics because it's messy, it's dirty, and we should have a separation between church and state has been a big lie that has sabotaged our church, but also our policy, because as we see it now, our church has been infiltrated. I think there's a lot of weak communities that are not actually teaching truth, that are becoming so tolerant to things that are immoral, but also our policy has been infiltrated by immoral people because we're not in the battlefield. I would go back to what Father de Pravanco always told me in my freshman year in college in a homily that it's never left me with: the problem with darkness is not darkness, it's lack of light. We are called to be light and bearers of light in the world, and if the people that are called to be light are afraid to speak up, want to hide, have their own little micro community, and not be part of the culture war, then we have a massive problem, which is why I think we have a problem right now. I think we were part of the problem. I do think that I look back and say, January, you were irresponsible. You didn't want to get in the fight. And in some ways you were a coward. And I want to be able to use all that awareness to now say, Lord, what is my call now? I no longer want to be part of that old January who was afraid to speak up, who didn't really want to be part of that war. What is my role now? And that's the same invitation I have for you, is what's your role now, which is really why in the women's school we train women with hundreds and hundreds of skills that they need to develop, that compounds over time, but also their mindset. This is why we do scripting, because we need to know how to think. We need to know what to say to ourselves. We need to know how to have conversation. We need to know how to influence people in a way that brings them towards truth, beauty, and goodness. This is not the time to be complacent about our own capacity. This is the time for training. It's like boot camp, and then you go to war, because it's a spiritual warfare. And this is a war between good and evil. Oops. I think I just lost that. Well, I think the point of this whole really video is to ask ourselves, what am I called to in this next season of life? What is my purpose, and what is my role in the spiritual battle? What can I do to counter the movement against our faith, against our femininity, and against our freedom? Because if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? You have an irreplaceable call to rebuild culture and help our families, our future flourish. And so we have to be vigilant in our duty to form ourselves and train ourselves to be that warriors. My name is January Donovan. I'm the founder of the Women's School, where we are creating a revival of our femininity through formation. And I want to invite you to be part of this movement of studying and growing together, because that is going to be what we need to fight the spiritual battle. And we want to create a movement of women that are growing and studying together so that we can become vessels of truth, beauty, and goodness. If you want to join our free community, you can go to tws.com, twscommunity.com, where we get practical life training and really how to do this day-to-day practical femininity, where we talk about what's deep, what's meaningful, and what's also practical so that it's applicable. God bless you, and I hope that you are able to fulfill your call, so that one day you can go before God and He can say, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have become the woman I have called and created you to be.